3, 2, 1.
Awake thou that sleepest. Arise from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ and fellow earth travelers. Along with Mr. Anderson and Honor Mama Jeannie, you're listening to your Last Call, 2 hours of Christian talk radio with a sting. Brought to you by the Natural Family Foundation. As goes the family, so goes the nation. Our call-in number, if you wish to participate, is 614-423-4220. Our show can be accessed on the mmunited.org website if you've happened upon us by chance. I'm your host, B.J. Edwards, and this is my world. And good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I can't hear myself very well, but I guess that's okay. That's not necessary for me to hear. Hey, what could possibly go wrong? Do you find yourself playing identity politics without an identity? Got to be careful there, because if you don't have an identity, they're going to assign one to you. Or have you already noticed? Mr. Anderson and I are going to be talking about that this morning. We also have a guest, Ryan Messano, who helped organize the California's first Straight Pride Parade. If you'd like to talk to us this morning, the call-in number, and we're trying this again, is 302-202-1110. Then put in conference caller code 745353. It's on our Facebook page, if that'll help. 302-202-1110. Then when you want to talk to us, 745353.
We like to make it easy, don't we?
Yeah. This is new. And hey, Saturday morning means Last Call Radio. You know, I'm in the process of reading the Red-Green Axis Part 2 by our good friend James Simpson. But I'm looking at a red-green rainbow axis. This is incredible. I recognize the communist threat. That's the red. And the threat from Islam is Sharia law. That's the green. Especially when it comes to the family, and was quite aware, at least I thought I was aware, of the threat of sexual perversion led by the homosexual mafia.
There's all kinds of fronts. All kinds of fronts.
At least that's what I thought until I attended a recent town hall meeting in my local city. And I'll be honest with you, I was absolutely astonished at what I saw and what I heard. Herman Goring.
And maybe what you didn't see and what you didn't hear.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We'll get into that in detail here shortly.
Yeah, I know.
But Herman Goring would be proud of the way the LGBT community has managed to brainwash an entire nation. The ones that I conversed with this past week served as a prime example. These citizens were absolutely clueless and emotionally charged to the point where I believe they're walking zombies, only caring that we not stop their loved ones from self-destruction. Don't keep my children from hurting themselves. Don't keep my children from living a long or a short life and dying a miserable death. Again, more on this in the first hour, but it was quite revealing. Quite revealing. And as usual, we have to talk about politics. Bernie Sanders suggests imposing a meat tax to combat climate change. You can no longer ask what will they think of next. You can't, because they'll bring something up. Biden wants to shut down detention facilities for illegal immigrants. We don't need them. Is that the centers or the immigrants there, Joe? Sloppy Joe. It's not just the former Canadian Prime Minister hoping Hurricane Dorian hits Florida because of Trump. It's good old Americans. Any way to get rid of Donald Trump. And you know, they say, the opposition says marijuana will be a drain on our economy. But there's a new business that has just been created. You know, God is so good. They've created a breathalyzer that can detect marijuana. Huh? Come on. That's an entrepreneur. That's good business, right? And of course, we're going to need more police to take care of the additional inebriates. I said it on a court case some time ago. And it was very revealing what they were going to do. It's the same thing as alcohol. And okay, folks, here it comes. You remember hearing about all those indictments that are just sitting there waiting for Hillary, BC, Barack and company? Huh? You remember that?
Yeah, 50-some or something like that.
Oh, no, this was into the hundreds, I think, Mr. Anderson. I think it grew to that. I think our old insider friend QAnon told us about that, right?
Yeah, is he still talking to people?
I have no idea. Didn't listen to him then, don't listen for him now. And I believe the number was in the thousands. This week's subject in America was finally, the much anticipated real first indictment. James Comey, right? A slam dunk. After further review, not so much, folks. By the way, I've stopped listening to Sean Hannity because I refuse to get my hopes up with this third-grade elementary excitement that he generates. And I'm sure he's still talking about the blockbuster news. This is just crazy.
Maybe he listens to Q.
Yeah, maybe he is Q. But I digress here. According to town hall writer Katie Pavlik, this week the Department of Justice Inspector General released a scathing report. There you go. Now we got him. Scathing. Confirming that the fired FBI Director James Comey is a politically motivated liar and rampant leaker of official, confidential information. He broke all kinds of FBI rules, protocol, and laws in his effort to take down President Trump and his administration through the launch of the Special Counsel investigation on a foundation of lies generated by himself. As FBI Director Comey did not safeguard sensitive information obtained during the course of his FBI employment, and instead used it to create public pressure for official action. Comey set a dangerous example, this is according to Katie, for the over 35,000 current FBI employees and the many thousands of more FBI employees who similarly have access to or knowledge of non-public information, according to the Inspector General. If a country built on the rule of law, it is of utmost importance that all FBI employees adhere to the department and FBI policies, particularly when confronted with what appears to be extraordinary circumstances or compelling personal convictions. You need my phone? Yeah. Got that. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. He obviously used unauthorized disclosure of sensitive investigative information obtained during the course of FBI employment in order to achieve a personally desired outcome. Do you understand what they're talking about, what I just said? Do you understand the magnitude of that alone? If there isn't a law against that, there should be, right? So, Q fans, where's the indictment? Yeah, wait, not only did the public get stiffed on justice, this former admitted political activist, after confirming the AG found no evidence, then said, and the guy got some chutzpah, I'll tell you that, I'll say that for him. He said, I don't need a public apology from those who defamed me. But a quick message with a sorry we lied about you would be nice. Outstanding, folks. And you know what? We deserve what we're getting here. We're asking for all this. We're going to talk about identity today and passivity. We're asking for all this to come down on us. Not just us, our children and our grandchildren, the next generations. I can't imagine what would happen if we tried this same thing with Hillary. So we've stopped hearing about Comey on Fox, right? No. That's crazy. Hardly. They're still talking about what should have been, while James is looking down his nose at the whole mess with a wry smile on his face. Do you realize what you're doing, Fox? What you're carrying? Come on, folks. You're smarter than that. Okay, so we're going to the next case. McCabe, right? Oh, and our friend and oft unofficial contributor Mike Huckabee has a very interesting poll this week. It's as follows. Two-tiered justice system. James Comey was exposed as a liar and a leaker by the Department of Justice Inspector General report, but he stunningly congratulated himself for not being indicted. Why should any American citizen be held to legal standards if the head of the FBI isn't? Or an ex-president isn't? Or an ex-secretary of state isn't? Or an ex-governor of Arkansas isn't? The list goes on of the isn'ts. That wasn't on his poll, by the way. That was just my yabbering. Question on the poll. Do you think there's a two-tier justice system in our country that favors celebrity and wealth over everyone else? Well, sure. It's black and white, right? Or maybe a little bit more than that? Yes, no, undecided. So what do you think? Yes, no, undecided. Our friends are involved in the Equal Justice Tour, and rightfully so. But it's going to take more than standing on street corners, folks. Is that our identity? Is that who we are? We're the ones standing on street corners and screaming or yelling at the top of our voice, condemning, accusing. Is that what we're about? Can be part of it, but is that what we're about? Or are we white racist? Christians, prejudiced. Is that what we are? That's what they're calling us, right? Yeah. So we have to stand up and attest to it, right? What is our identity? I'm going to describe liberalism here. I guess I'll wait till after the break. And then I listened to Rush Limbaugh this week, and he had a guest, Ken Matthews. And Ken Matthews had a very, very interesting caller. And this call, I hope you understand what this call is meaning to the Republican Party. You know, the last best chance that we have, the Republican Party. 302-202-1110. 302-202-1110. And then 745-353. I'd like to hear your comments on this. Take an unofficial poll here. Is there justice in the United States? Or what I claim to be an amoral society with no appetite whatsoever for justice? Is that who we are? Who are we? Man, if somebody looks from the outside, they might say, well, you're neurotic. You're schizophrenic. masochistic. We don't like each other, right? Which means we don't like ourselves, we don't like our movement. If it's not done my way, then it's the highway. Think about our opposition. Think about that. What they do and how they do it. Hey, when we come back from break, walk away with Ken Matthews. And what is liberalism? Self-described. B.J. Edwards Long, Mr. Anderson, your last call. You are the best, Mr. Anderson. I was going to ask you to find that this morning.
Last call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life.
Who are you? Let me tell you how liberals describe themselves. They believe in themselves, folks. And I think that's something we don't do either. We don't really believe in ourselves. This is from my favorite Quora. I keep warning you about them. They are nasty, but they're good at it. The question posed on Quora: what is liberalism? And this comes from a gentleman by the name of Michael Latman. I have no idea who he is. He has a doctorate in philosophy and Kabbalah from the Russian Academy of Science. Why would somebody that graduated from the Russian Academy of Science be talking about liberalism? Well, I guess that would be about an authority, wouldn't it, Mr. Anderson? If we're going to have somebody that's talking about it, it might as well be somebody like that.
Sounds like insider information.
Yeah. Somebody that should know. Somebody that should know. Liberalism. Everyone has a place to say what they want. As long as it's in line with secular humanism, thought, and everything that goes along with it. Number 2, no hatred of anybody. Oh, man, I think about the riots, Antifa. Yeah, those are definitely liberals.
Love for Trump?
Yeah. Love everybody but Christians and white Anglo-Saxons. Number 3, what's a liberal? You can speak your mind openly and pluralistically, i.e., in a way allowing for multiple opinions. Now, this would be limited only by their ability to match up with communist or anti-Christian beliefs. You understand that. There is a template that they use. There are no rights and no wrongs. Everybody is okay. No guardrails. You can reach a dialogue, first and foremost, understand each other, and gradually integrate with each other. That's the liberal thought.
You mean mix water and oil?
Mm-hmm. Of course, this integration is one way, as Mr. Anderson is indicating. Think of the examples of Donald Trump and how these liberals responded to his election. Everyone has a place and say what they want. No hatred of anybody. You can speak your mind openly and pluralistically, allowing for multiple opinions. Yeah, we can reach dialogue. That's how they treat Donald Trump, right? Especially the press. A liberal describing themselves. A doctor in philosophy from Russia. As a result of such human conduct, we develop a greater understanding of human society. Wow. That's a prideful statement, folks. Humans we understand. By the way, they do all have an evil nature that cannot be controlled without a supernatural altercation of some sort. Comes in a lot of different flavors. But you ain't going to do it. Man isn't going to do it himself. Historically, we've tried that. and it never, ever, ever works out. However, if the situation continues as it does, this is the professor who's citing all these liberal ideals, where one side hates the other. What? Wait a minute. Didn't you say something about that not existing in the liberal camp? Hate? Then it cannot be considered as liberal or democratic. The side that is calling the other side non-democratic is already a non-democratic side. So we're name-calling for somebody for having an opinion which is welcome in the liberal camp. Am I understanding this correctly? This form of interstate-based politics is dead, according to our professor. I learned it upon myself in the former Soviet Union. This has to be a joke. Anyway, they would use pleasant words about brotherly love and unity to cover up their killing of people. Like abortions? Huh. It was used only with power motives to cover the social divisions and hatred, which was the reality of the time. Their high investment in the propaganda of this idea impressed not only its own people, but society as far as Western Europe. It worked for a while, and then it collapsed. Because it's a lot like what you're promoting, brother. However, today, according to Professor, where we have one side saying that it is liberal and Democrat and absolutely hates the other side, wanting to eliminate it completely, going as far as forcefully protesting against them, what kind of democracy is that? Democracy is that we sort these problems out peacefully and reasonably. Liberalism is when I gather together other people's opinions, wanting to connect everyone together in a social dialogue. Oh, isn't that nice, Mr. Anderson? Isn't that nice to hear?
Sweet words.
I wonder how come that doesn't translate. Why is that, you suppose?
Because they lie?
To themselves first. It has to do that way. I get a lot of material from Rush Limbaugh. And Ken Matthews was his guest on Friday. You know, this day and age, we need to be very careful who we find ourselves in cahoots with. For example, Ken Matthews was sitting in for Rush Limbaugh yesterday. Did you get that?
Is that what you wanted?
I don't know. Trainees in sports. They were talking about it was a gay guy talking about his marriage.
No,
he'd walked
I didn't
away.
get that.
No.
I couldn't find that.
That's fine.
This is a caller about female caller about being forced onto a male team.
Okay. Ken Matthews was sitting in for Rush Limbaugh yesterday and got a call from a former Democrat who was part of the walkaway movement. And that's fine. That's great. However, this call also and very proudly and at length talked about his husband. Yes, I said his husband. And how wonderful sodomy was as a lifestyle. And, of course, perfectly normal. He was not just trying to make the point that he and his husband, were both liberals and they had left the Democratic Party, which again is good, and that's fine. Where are they going to go next? They're going to come over to the Republican Party, right? Is that not why they're calling the Rush Limbaugh show? Now, if they're coming over to the party with expectations, what might those expectations be, by the way?
Sounds like infiltration to me.
Folks, we got a problem. And what makes you think they're not coming in with expectations? What makes you think that Brandon Straka, a admittedly gay man, by the way, who's been invited on this program, and so far we've not gotten any acceptance, and who also helped start the Walkaway program, what makes you think they're not expecting to be welcomed with open arms in the GOP? And what does that mean to you folks in the GOP? Just another lesser of the evils, right? Yeah, okay. Come on, we can't survive. We got to bring in the gays. We can't get Donald Trump elected unless we have gays. What bothered me about Ken's conversation with this caller was that he was welcoming his new sodomite comrade with open arms. You're gay? No problem. We're a big tent party, so welcome aboard. Hugs and kisses. No, Ken didn't say that exactly. Or that way. But he might as well have. Folks, if you lie with dogs, you're going to get fleas.
Yeah.
Okay?
That old saying.
And the Republican Party needs to make sure that they don't find themselves in bed with sodomites. If Republicans don't watch what they're doing, they'll end up looking exactly like the Democratic Party of today. You know, it's already pretty difficult to find a difference anyway, isn't it?
Already, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sometimes it seems as though the Democrats are just more honest with their intent. Think about that. Republicans say no, 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 but allow the act to happen anyway. So when you judge their works, and that's what we need to do, judge their works, not what they say, judge their works. There's a separation there, but that separation is getting narrower, narrower, and narrower. And now with the gays in the party, the sodomites, the sexual perverts, the LGBTQ movement, this makes sense. This is great marketing. These guys are good. Here's another thing that maybe you ought to think about. When it comes to Donald Trump, remember our conversation recently about how concerned Republicans were that he might actually sign the Equality Act if it gets to his desk? You know why that is? Because he seems to have a weak spot for the gender challenged. And if we're inviting buggers into the Republican Party, we shouldn't be surprised if we don't soon find some rather significant structural damage. What is concerning is that the president knows he can play the pro-life folks like a fiddle and dangle a Planned Parenthood carrot in one hand and like a good magician pulling a sodomite out of his hat with the other. Okay, let's stop abortion, but allow sodomy. Really? I said it before and I'm going to say it again. When it comes to the family, we need to take a holistic approach. And by holistic, I mean everyone. And a united approach. A family identity, if you will. Oops. If you save an unborn child's life, you should be obligated to be sure that they don't reside in a living hell where drug abuse, child and spousal abuse prevail, or where pornography, divorce, enslaving taxes, unnatural parents are the environment you've placed them in. If you save their life, you want to make sure that you keep them from that wide path to hell and not push them into it. I've stood in front of abortion clinics before, and I've experienced saving a baby's life, and it's an incredible experience. But I've often thought, okay, what next? What happens to that family? What happens to that child? What kind of an environment are they going to be living in? What have I opened them up to? Are they going to be forced into homosexuality? If they're a tomboy when they're 6 years old or 7 years old, is some government agency going to come in and say, okay, we're going to change your sex? And you don't know any difference. Sounds good to you. And then later on, when all that's done, and you've taken all those drugs, you're on your deathbed because of that, and because of the AIDS, and because of the other diseases. What then? What have you saved? Or if you have an insecure child that grows up in a single-parent home and ends up on the roof in Las Vegas and starts shooting people, or goes into their high school starts killing their classmates or takes drugs and kills themselves? What have we done? What have we accomplished by that? Hey, when we come back, great meeting in terms of educating yours truly, BJ. I want to talk to you about what I attended this week. Incredible. 302-202. Hang on a second. Larry, hang in there a minute. I'll get with you if you can hear us. Thanks.
Stay tuned for Last Call with your host, BJ Edwards.
BJ Edwards, and we're back. We got a caller on the line. Larry? Larry, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep. Unfortunately, yes.
He is such a nice guy, I tell you.
Larry, I love you, brother. Appreciate your call. What's on your mind? Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
You didn't come alone.
I didn't hear either one of you.
You didn't come alone. What's on your mind, brother?
No, I just tuned in to listen, and this is the number that I had, so this is one I used.
Good. Oh, you just want to listen. Okay. We'll let you listen, and I'll get back to my yabbering. Thanks, Larry. This week, first of all, I got a question for you. What do blacks, women, and homosexuals all have in common? Speaking of blacks, this week I found out what it must feel like to be a black man at a KKK rally. You see, I had the opportunity to attend a local town hall meeting to talk about whether our city should be giving special rights to the LGBTQ community when it comes to employment, housing, and etc. And it's everything. They're not just talking about employment and housing. They want you to kneel before them. Excuse the double entendre. It seems that one well-intended Jezebel City Council member wanted to make sure that our city was a welcoming community to sexual perverts and, of course, the other board members, with one lone expectation. And they're now headed to approving a draconian measure that will handcuff, literally, Christian and conservatives in the community. The only thing left was the gory details. And as we all know, the devil is in the detail, right? So like the fool that I am, I get ready. I'm thinking, man, there's going to be some people there I might be able to talk to about the natural family. Maybe they don't oppose the potential ordinance, but maybe they're reasonable and we'll talk. Let's see. So I jump in my car. I drive to the meeting. I went early and could not believe the number of cars that were already there in the lot. It was incredible. I was there about 20 minutes early, and the lot was 3/4 of the way full. So I take my NFF, Natural Family Foundation folders, put them on their wing. Boy, this is going to be great. Such a large turnout. I could find more possible supporters. That was my hope. Before I even entered the building, there were several LGBTQ supporters who immediately approached me and asked me to sign a petition supporting the proposed new city ordinance, by the way, which they haven't even got it yet. We don't even know what it is. Now, I said appreciable and went inside. I told them I appreciated what they were doing and went inside the building where the roundtable conference was to be held. As I entered the door, I was once again approached by someone asking me to sign the same petition. And as I turned around to walk away, I was immediately met by a large rainbow-collared sign claiming our city to be rainbow friendly. I turned, walked toward the table where you sign in, and you get assigned a table. And beside me, a woman who was advising one of the assistants at the table that her wife might be late, and she wanted to make sure that they were at the same table. I signed in, was assigned my table, and immediately went over to it and sat down. There eventually be 12 of us at the table, and there were 12 tables, and I think they ended up having actually 13, 14, maybe 15 tables total because of the turnout. I found out later that I, like the other two conservatives that I talked with after the meeting, each sat at a table that was on average 99.9% pro-sodomite. Now, maybe you Christians out there would say, "Hey, Jim, it looks like a great opportunity to share the truth." Amen? Well, let me put it this way. I had about as much chance of sharing the truth at the table as I would sharing pork recipes at a mosque. Again, I know the feeling of being black and at a KKK meeting. At my table, I was first met by a father of a gay son, and then a grandmother as well, gays in her family, then a mother with 2 gay children, a high school psychologist, a high school senior who was the president of the school's LGBTQ club with her grandmother in tow. The list goes on. It seemed that everyone had a story or a relative that was in the lifestyle, quote unquote. Interestingly enough, half of my group of 12 attended a church on a regular basis. All were pro-sodomite. Half of them went to the same liberal Methodist church, which I knew about. One was a Catholic, and I'm not sure about the others. But if they go to one of the churches in our community, of which I've attended or visited over the past 30 years, they would want to love those poor lost souls. Love them to hell. Also at my table was a very liberal mother of 2 homosexuals from a nearby city who said she was asked by a city council member to attend the meeting. Her hope is that she can start this insanity in her city as well. Did I tell you that every one of them was in full support of the yet-to-be-seen ordinance? As I looked across the tables, I did notice the room was occupied mostly by women and or those that identified as women, if you know what I mean, Vern. Probably 75 to 80%. And I recognized just one pastor from an Episcopalian church, or is that an oxymoron? And a lady with a white collar around her neck, full black robe, and that was pretty much it. No other pastors in attendance, and I know most of them. But you know, maybe that was a good thing. The stated purpose of the meeting was to discuss 2 predetermined details with regards to an ordinance that the city again has yet to approve, let alone put on paper for the public to see. Yet we need to discuss some important details, not whether we should pass the ordinance or not. No. That's an assumed. They wanted to get into the details of it. 150 people in that room, and there were likely 4 or 5 people that would at least question what was happening there. Think about that. So, why were we there? We were there to clarify, to answer some questions which were predetermined before we ever got into the door. I have no idea who predetermined those. I did ask, but I did not get an answer. Now, there were actually 3 questions. The first question was an icebreaker. Why are you here? And at my table, I said, I'm the director of the Natural Family Foundation, and I'm here to find out how this will affect the natural family. I think they almost had to send the emergency squad. There were some very deep breaths. One lady put her hand over her heart. That's all I said. That's all I said. And then the others described who they were, and the lady from the outside city said, she was there because she wanted to do the same thing. They needed to do the same thing in her city. They wanted to be open and welcoming. Wow, what a term, welcoming. That if you're a welcoming city and you pass an ordinance like this, you want those no smoking signs with the red circle and a cross in it, or an X in it. We need to put a cross in there because that's exactly what they're doing. They're getting rid of Christian thought. How do I know that? I, in my work experience, worked for a company that was in the medical field. And one day, I walked in to our cafeteria, commons area, if you will, and they had this huge sign. It was probably a 4-foot by 6-foot sign, which was extolling Gay Pride Month. And if you go on breaks, you go into this room. And if you eat your lunch there, which I did, you go into this room. And when you leave, you have to pass this room. So the employees were being bombarded. This was 10 years ago, a decade ago, folks. So what do? Mrs. BJ was not happy with this at all. I went to my boss and said, I feel a little uncomfortable because of this. And she said, she was a Christian, she says, do whatever you want, and I support you. So I went to Human Resources, and the young gay fella that initiated this activity, talked to him. Of course, he didn't know anything about it, and he didn't know that I knew where this came from. And then I went to his boss, and I finally ended up at the VP of Human Resources. Then I went to my boss's boss, and my boss's boss's boss, and I went to the VP of the entire building, of the operations, and I had a meeting with him. Now, let me tell you the outcome of this and what the outcome of any kind of an ordinance is like this. It's kind of like this doesn't happen in a vacuum. If you apply heat to something, there's going to be some air leave. There's just not enough room for it. Something's going to have to leave. Something's going to have to suffer. In the 5+ years, now, I'm an ex-business owner. I'm a graduate with a business degree in human resources. And I had 20 years experience in the field, in sales. In the 5+ years after I talked to the VP of operations, I interviewed for something, I'll say over 50 positions within that company. 50 positions. You want to guess? These positions were in human resources, recruiter, which I was. I made a livelihood at it. They were in sales, did that, was very successful at it. And other areas, quality assurance, and I was a quality assurance manager one time in my career. Over 50 positions. You want to guess how many of those positions I got?
0.
That's exactly right. And that is what's going to happen when you inflict this kind of a law, and it is a preference law, on a community. And what you are going to do is encourage the growth of perversion. You're going to decrease the healthiness of the society, mental and physically. And by the way, our good city is also thinking about being a city that allows for illegal aliens, among other things.
Sanctuary city.
Mm-hmm.
Get your shovels ready.
Yep. I want you to think about that, because that is what's going to happen. For every action, there's a reaction. It does not happen in a vacuum. We'll come back. I'm going to talk about a little demographics in our rigged, and it was a rigged meeting. B.J. Edwards, Long, Mr. Anderson, your last call. Amen to that.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with B.J. Edwards.
B.J. Edwards,
Hey,
along with
BJ.
Mr. Anderson. Yeah. Larry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question along with a comment.
Okay.
You know, your experience this last week and the percentages and the overwhelming odds of whose side who was on there leads to a belief that I've had for a long time, and that is that the percentage of people involved in those death styles is way, way higher than our side claims.
Larry, I can't.
What do you think?
I can't confirm that, but I am thinking that. I mean, when I walked into that meeting, I expect some proportionality there, and there was absolutely none whatsoever. Now, again, if this was a rigged meeting, then it makes sense. And I'm going to talk about the percentages in my town, which this might represent. But I don't know. Other than, and I'm recommending that people do this, that we go out and we take a survey. In other words, we take our own petition out into the community and see how many folks we can get to sign it. Larry, I'm half afraid to do that, to be honest with you, because I'm afraid you're right. And if that's the case, go ahead.
I think it's a case of our side is burying their head in the sand and believing false data. Because in my experience, the people that I see around me every day in my neighborhood, and when I go to the store and stuff, you don't have to. You don't have to ask somebody a survey question to find out if they're in their lifestyle. If you see them holding hands and blowing lip kisses at the girl that they're walking, if it's a girl and she's doing that with a girl she's walking into the store with, I think they've already answered the question.
Now, you got a good point there. I'm hoping to find out. Go ahead, Larry.
Percentage of people in that death style, I would say, is easily 40 to maybe 50% of people in this country.
Wow. I hope you're wrong, and I'll pray you're wrong.
I do too.
But you might be right. I'm sorry, you might be. And again, I'm hoping I can get some people in the community, and they're just a paltry number of people, a remnant, if you will, that see the storm clouds, to see what effect this will have. I mean, in my case, you know how stubborn I am, Larry. I have to experience it. So that's why God let me experience what I experienced at work. So, 10 years later or 15 years later on the radio program, I could share that information with people and give them the reality of what this really is going to look like. But I'm maybe they're as stubborn as I am, and maybe they deserve to have to go through this, or their children. Or it just fascinates me that this is going on. This is just it's so obvious that this is wrong. So obvious. Yet we're trying to rationalize it to where we can make it right. Doesn't make sense. One more minute, Larry. What else can you say?
God help us.
Yeah, I got you, brother.
help us.
There is, it does leave a lot of us speechless. Thank you very much, Larry. God bless you.
Romans 1:32.
If I can work that. How come that didn't work? Anyway, demographics on this rigged meeting. At this, what I'll call the city West Gomorrah. I'll name the city West Gomorrah. What our well-intended city council members needed was a good turnout by the public. There were approximately 150 people there at the meeting. They took pictures to the city, and there was one man from the national press there. Videos, which we'll see over and over again, proclaiming the huge turnout, a.k.a. support. The population of West Gomorrah is estimated to be 36,000. And it's also the home of a liberal university. And I think there were a few sexually challenged students in attendance from the school. It was well orchestrated. Well orchestrated. There was mention by one of the leading moderators that many of the tables were emotionally charged, which makes perfect sense. Being that believing homosexuals are normal has to be an emotional decision and not an objective one. Facts: if the population of West Gomorrah is 36,000, then let's say 1/3 of it is of voting age, and half of them are registered voters. That leaves approximately 6,000 voters. Now that means that if 90% of those in attendance were for the proposed sexual orientation preference ordinance, then 0.25% of the population would be responsible for the new ordinance, which we all know by now is not a possibility but a sure thing. And I'm not discarding what Larry said, I'm just running some figures by. I could substantiate the 0.2% of the population, and I can make a case for 40% of the population that Larry's making, just based on this one meeting. And by the way, this gets even better. Not only is our city going to have a new oppressive law that reaches out and touches the Christians in our community, there will be a separate court, not in West Gomorrah, but in the sanctuary and Sodom capital city of Columbus, Ohio. They will be hearing the cases. Wait a minute. Say what? Yep. And the reasoning from West Gomorrah? 2 words: finances and experience. It seems that Columbus, Ohio, you see, which is extremely gay-friendly, their annual Gay Pride Parade draws upwards to 500,000 people. Columbus already has a board that conducts these inquisitions. Well, yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. So the board is experienced, and yes, they are. Especially if you count being loaded with homosexuals, and my guess is not one Christian on that board. But what the heck? Why would we even expect today's Christian to make a difference anyway? In all of this, we have to look at this as an opportunity and a turning point. I mentioned to some friends that this was a turning point for our city before this ever occurred. And to be honest with you, it is as well as an opportunity for each of us individually first and then collectively to finally stand up for what is right. This may be for God's word, common sense, or natural law. Apply what best works for you. But it is an opportunity, not just for the opposition, but for us. And for us, it's to apply some responsibility to your church and organizations. But first, we got to start with the fathers. It has to start in the home. And I'm going to speak especially to you fathers and mothers. And this isn't just about West Gomorrah. This is happening in your city, or has happened in your city. It's coming. This is a planned invasion. And the homosexual mafia doesn't give a hoot who it hurts. Fathers and mothers, please encourage your husbands to do so. And then stand by them. It looks like initially you could be putting everything at harm's and in harm's reach. And you might be. But you still got to stand. The women are very security oriented. You got to stand, not in front of your man, not behind him, There's nothing wrong with behind, but in this case, you need to be standing with him. And I'm speaking to those that see the storm clouds, that truly know and or believe in the Word of God. Once you get the nudge from those family fathers, you better be prepared to stand up and fight for the Word of God. And please, pastors, Christians, stop with this rapture stuff. It will come soon enough, especially if you remain disobedient and disrespectful to God and His Word. By the way, do you really think that God is going to zap you up from this mess that you helped create or stood by and watched while on your knees? I started this segment with the question, what do blacks, women, and homosexuals have in common? It's very simple and the key to success in politics, sports, and life. Their movement is unified and they're committed. And they also know who they are. So how about you, your family, and your church? This is your opportunity. And I hope you take it. If you don't have anyone, and you don't like what's going on, you got no one to blame but yourself. You can't blame your pastor if you haven't asked him. And please, by now you should all know what I mean by ask. If not now, when? If not you, who? Blacks identify other blacks. Women identify other women. Gays identify other gays. And you? How do we make it obvious who we are? How do we define ourselves?
Good question. Good questions.
How can you play identity politics if you don't even know who you are?
Or you're afraid to show who you are.
Or who's on your team? And I mentioned being schizophrenic and masochistic. If you don't like your identity, and that includes others that are on your team, that's masochism. And you can't win the game if you're masochistic because you're going to eventually destroy yourself. So we have to define who we are and what we're about.
I read on Facebook this morning on a comment, somebody said something about feeling bad because he went out without wearing his, when he went out and he didn't wear his T-shirt that said something about Jesus on it.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
Somebody just
we're
came
gonna,
in or...
Yeah. Hang in there. Jerry, we got a caller, Jerry, from Texas.
We got 3 minutes.
Yeah, Jerry, we got 3 minutes. What's on your mind?
3 minutes. Okay, let me see if I can condense it down. You're talking about the Christians. How can we identify ourselves? The problem with the Christians nowadays, I believe, is they're all afraid to identify themselves because of the repercussions that they might entail by doing so. This is what we need to combat. We need to combat that fear that we're all hiding behind now. We need to get past that, and we need, like I've said so many times, we need to get just as loud, just as vocal, and just as demanding as they are. You know, this country was not built on this country was not built on homosexual desires or corruption or any of those other evil, sinister things happening to our country right now. This country was built on Christian values. You know, we followed the Bible before, we followed Scripture before in our laws, and we've gotten so far away from that now the powers that be have come in and basically instilled this fear in all Christians that they've become so complacent behind that fear that I don't know if there's any waking them up or not.
Jerry, we're going to have a guest on the next hour. I know you don't have much time right now. If you want to call back after we talk to the guest, I'll keep you on line. You can listen to what we're doing. But if you want to pipe in after that, you're more than welcome to. I don't want to feel like you've been cheated of time, but we do have to get to that guest when he comes on board. So
take this hard break.
Yeah, we got to take a hard break, which means we got to leave now. I appreciate what you're saying, believe in what you're saying, and we'll get back with you soon. Hang in there.
You bet.
B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call.
Last call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life.
I think there's something flying around our studio this morning, Mr. Anderson. Is there a Satan bug? Is there a Satan bug? Ryan, hang in there. Hang in there. We'll be right with you. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. This is your last call. And we've had some good calls this morning, and I think the system is working a little bit better. Been talking about what's going on in our society today. You are listening to Last Call with B.J. Edwards and Mr. Anderson. And we help an organization called the Natural Family Foundation, naturalfamilystrong.com. Would encourage you to go to that site to find a little bit more about where we're coming from. And we have
and ways to get involved.
Yes, exactly. We have a special guest this morning, and I love listening to Jesse Lee Peterson. Jesse Lee Peterson is an absolute trip. He tells it like it is. I love him. Last weekend, Jesse Lee spoke at a Straight Pride Coalition event in Modesto, California. The event was organized by the National State Pride Coalition, Straight Pride Coalition, a pro-family, pro-life group that promotes Western civilization and nationalism. The Straight Pride Parade was slated to be held at Modesto's Grasadio Park on August 24th, followed by a march to a Planned Parenthood clinic, but organizers were denied a permit at the last minute. Hello. How about them liberals? After City Councilwoman Christy Ayu, I love that name, a radical LGBTQ activist, accused the group of promoting hate speech. And it's hate because it differs from what their hate speech is. The councilwoman smeared Jesse and his group, saying they were racist. Did I tell you that Jesse Lee was black? I don't know whether I mentioned that or not. And that they were violent and scared people in the community. The truth does that sometimes there, councilwoman. According to Don Grundman, founder of the National Straight Pride Coalition, and I've talked to Don before, he's an incredible man. Sadly, as we have been so often in the past, this type of rhetoric, which the sodomite-friendly councilwoman practices, also justifies and encourages violence against conservatives from leftists and Antifa supporters. Before the rowdy, a group of leftists calling themselves Modesto Nonviolent Coalition gathered before Modesto City Hall, pledging to counter-protest. St. Paul's Episcopal Church hosted an interfaith vigil for or against the parade, and audience members spoke against the event planned by the National Straight Pride Coalition. They even had an imam speak from the pulpit. That's incredible. These LGBT snowflakes can tolerate a religion that condones executing homosexuals, but they oppose a peaceful parade by Christians. I've got more I want to talk about, but before I do, I'm going to bring on our special guest. And if I can do that here. Ryan, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Hi. Ryan Messano from California. Ryan, you were in this parade, weren't you?
California?
Yeah, California. You were in this parade.
Yes, I was. I was very fortunate to be a part of the very first Straight Pride Parade in America, from what I know of, with Jesse Lee and many other activists that came from pretty much all over California.
Okay. So how welcoming was the city with regards to your movement? It doesn't sound like they're very welcoming, tolerant, diverse.
It's kind of shocking because you would expect that Modesto, which isn't really one of the big Democrat cities, would be a little bit more friendly towards the message. And indeed, their sheriffs and police force did a spectacular job in protecting us. The other people did not need to be protected from us. We needed to be protected from them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was very unwelcoming. There's actually a video link on Jesse Lee's article on WND where you can see an activist who actually spoke with beforehand and she's actually on ABC. I don't actually, and to be honest, I don't know if it was a he or a she. I have to confess, but and I don't want.
You're pretty sure it was a human?
So I'll just leave it at.
Are you pretty sure it was a human?
It was definitely a human.
Okay, you're sure?
Just which gender I was unable to tell. Yes. So anyhow, ABC made this person out to be a perfect saint, where they were talking about how they just wanted to defend the community against hate. And yet Jesse Lee showed a picture where this same person had his or her camera directly in the face of a man, at least in his 70s, who was on our side, just like sticking it right in his face. So, of course, humans don't really like that. So he kind of like gently brushed it away. Well, this person took that camera and smashed this 70-year-old man directly into his back with that camera. And so this is the peaceful, tolerant types that the left is full of. Even when I had a conversation with this person, we were just going over basic American history, and of course, as is usual with the left, there's zero comprehension of it. But there was extreme indignation that they were expected to know the fundamentals of American history, which they deemed to be racist and abusive and full of white privilege and on, everything else they've been indoctrinated with by the Marxist media and schools.
So when you got there, did you? I assume you arrived before the parade, and was there a pre-parade meeting? Yes, and it was fantastic. Dawn did a great job. I was wondering why I didn't get the exact address so I could just MapQuest it, but I guess there was a need for secrecy because the Antifa types were trying to come and break it up. And the organizers did a fabulous job in getting this beautiful farm in the middle of like a cornfield with cows. I felt I was on a little house on the prairie again. It was just a great scenery. So we went into this barn that on the inside was awesome. I mean, it had memorabilia probably spanning the past century. I was busy I could barely pay attention to the speakers. I was trying to look around at all the stuffed deer and all these, it was amazing scenery. I even took pictures, but we had Jesse Lee spoke actually before I got there, and then when I got there, Dave Bush, pastor, was giving a what?
What the Bible actually says about homosexuality, which probably fewer than 10% of the churches in America will actually do. And then we were alerted that Antifa had showed up along with the media, and the farmer had got wind, and of course they're going to go after him. So we all had to get up hurriedly and evacuate before the Antifa thugs arrived. So
let me stop you right there, Ryan. Let me stop you right there. I want our audience to understand what you just said. For fear of your life, you had to leave a peaceful meeting because those people that oppose you had every intent. We have seen this on TV. We have seen what they do to protesters, especially ones that are effective. So you understand that these people are acting on hate and fear of the effectiveness of this group. So we have a group that's at a farm, not exciting nothing, and they're being threatened already, and they haven't even done anything yet. So go ahead, Ryan. I wanted to get that in. I want to make sure our audience understands the situation.
Yes, because this media has been brainwashing people to think that we harmless types were just simply standing up for the very values that made America great, that we're the problem, when in reality we're being assaulted and attacked ruthlessly by the Antifa types, which, if you really look into them, there is extremely little, and I'd say virtually no difference, between them and the communists that created the brutality in Russia, China, and Cambodia that killed 100 million people. That's what's very frightening.
Great point.
To many of us is that we are looking at these young people, which Vladimir Lenin said the best revolutionaries are youth. And later on, if you could see pictures and videos of that, you will see people who you just take one look at them and you know they have virtually no morals to speak of. And yet they holler and shriek about how tolerant and loving they are and how hateful and immoral we are. Just absolutely insane.
Projection.
But yeah, so we...
Good. You're leaving the farm. So, where did you go to?
So we left the farm, and then we drove to Planned Murderhood in Modesto, and that was the site for our protest. We were supposed to have a march, but as you mentioned earlier, the homosexual councilwoman whose son was actually raised by a Christian who was on our side, the adopted mother, her name is Melinda Mason. Her son is Matthew Mason, and the biological mother is the council member that you named, who's like a radical lesbian, and her son, she has now turned her son into homosexuality, and he's rejected the Christian upbringing that he had. So an interesting story to the whole thing. Melinda is a fabulous woman. I met her. She's a wealth of knowledge, very determined, very spirited, very devout woman. So we went to there. Of course, the television cameras were there, replaced with news media. And so I was started up a couple conversations with the news media, and just like was wondering why they were evaluating our event when perhaps they need to be evaluating why they were participating in our civic processes without a basic understanding of the Constitution and our history. That didn't go over very well with a few of them. And but there was two very objective listeners who were independent media from Modesto named Carlos and Gabby. They were from a independent Modesto media that they understood that the corporate media was dominating, and they wanted to give their community's outlook on it. So I had a very interesting conversation with them. However, as you normally can see at these rallies, the other side engages in just what communists have always done, in their shout and shrieks and chants, and basically they try to drown out every bit of reasonable conversation. And one gentleman showed up. He had to be probably 6'4", I'd say a good 260, and he wasn't overweight. He was very fit too. However, he managed to put himself into, a bikini brief, it looked like, and his upper part was in some very tight thing too. So it was a grown man in about as skimpy an outfit as you could possibly imagine, and he's walking out around. It was. It hurt me to watch it, because I was like, this is the disgrace to this man to walk around looking like that.
I was just thinking, I didn't want to picture that.
Yes. Ryan, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. We didn't want to picture that either. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. So this group, instead of going to the farm, then found out where you were, and then hustled over to where you were and started harassing you there, started intimidating you, trying to bully you, trying to distract you. That was the purpose of them showing up.
Exactly.
Not to accentuate your First Amendment right. No, to make sure that if you tried to exercise that it would be null and void. So, and how long?
Right. And
were
so,
you
like,
Go ahead.
Don Grunman, the organizer, and Jesse Lee Peterson would stand like in the front, and they were mobbed by people just yelling, shouting, screeching. If they held this sign, so Jesse Lee Peterson held up a sign saying, "Build the wall in Trump 2020." And you can imagine how well that went over with them. So then what they would do is they would jump in front of them and hold up their signs to basically they actively tried to block. They didn't want like free speech for everyone to hold your sign up next to ours. No, they made sure to get in front of our signs to drown us out, to chant over us, to basically make any reasonable discourse impossible. So it was quite something to watch them. However, there was many reasonable people from our side who I saw everyone hold their composure very well, considering how we were being provoked. I walked into a neighboring Wendy's, and there was she looked like a Latina young woman in there with, she had two kids, and she's like, I was watching it. She's like, I really like your hat. And since I was wearing a MAGA hat, I knew she was a supporter. So it's interesting. There was a lot of people from the community who supported us. But of course, with these violent, intimidating types around.
Yeah, they're not going to come over and
you're not going to.
Right. They're not going to come over with you.
No.
And I understand it. Yeah. Mr. Anderson, we're going to take a break. And when we come back from the break, there's something that's been missing here in our conversation. Well, there's been a lot of things missing here. righteousness for starters, but something from a man's standpoint that's missing here, and that is the police. Where when we come back, let's talk about the police and what went on with them, because, well, they're supposed to be protectors, and how exactly that worked out. We're on with Ryan Messano. He was part of the Straight Pride Parade in California, probably America's first, and was there on the ground. B.J. Edwards Long, Mr. Anderson, your last call.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with B.J. Edwards.
Mr. Anderson, when you leave my employ, you'll probably always have a job as a disc jockey, because you know the songs to play. You know the songs to play. Hey, you're on with Last Call. And by the way, folks, I don't see where this isn't your last call. We're in pretty dire straits in America, folks. And we're getting a good example of it today. We last left our guest, Ryan Messano, at an abortion clinic, and they're conducting a straight pride parade, and they're being harassed and being bullied and being yelled at, likely spit on if that's, I imagine that happened, and so where is the public servants here? What are the police doing during all this?
Well, there's actually, surprisingly, the police, especially the sheriffs, they were far more supportive of our gathering than the city council was, and they showed up in force. There was about 70 or 80 officers at least.
Whew.
May have been more, including they brought out 10 mounted police officers on horses. They had 5 to 10 police officers on bicycles. So they weren't playing games. They showed up and did a great job. I have no complaints about the police. Actually, they when the protesters were basically getting in people's faces and getting very violent, they actually physically put their bodies in between the protesters and us. So they made no arrests. If you're a police force, I even saw one young man, I guess he had some kind of, I don't know, a knife or something. I don't know exactly what it was. And so the police were like, you need to get rid of that. And so he's on his way out, and I'm watching the rest of them, and basically the protesters were linking the police in with us and basically saying, attack all of them. We're all the bad people. So it's pretty frightening how when you get these mobs going, they don't make any distinctions. I mean, when you hate law and order, you hate us, you hate the police, you hate everything that has anything to do with good. So at one point, their chants, they were calling like us Nazis, and they were calling the police Nazis and fascists too. So watching their response when that one young man was being led away, and they were starting to say, "What the F? What the police?" And they were trying to call the police pigs. So these people are decidedly against law and order. They have no law and order within themselves, and so they despise it anywhere in society where they find it. And but I have to strongly commend the police, because unlike the police in Berkeley, which I was at the basically, you might as well call it the Battle of Berkeley in 2017 April, when you had full-scale brawls going on in public between Antifa and people who showed up on our side who were just simply having a free speech rally, when we were surrounded by 300 black-clad thugs throwing M80s and hitting people in the head with bike locks. So those police, that was one story. But the police here at this event were probably due to the fact that it was in rural California and much more conservative than your Democrat hellhole big cities. It was a much more of a presence. At the end, we had the police officers were saying, hey, we're about to leave. I think it was about 4 o'clock. And they were letting us know that we might want to leave for our own safety. Now imagine this. We are American citizens. We are having a protest, a peaceful one. We intend no harm to anybody, and we're being told by the police that we should probably leave for our own safety. I can't stress that enough. We're in America, and we're being told that a peaceful rally has to disperse for our safety. So I was like, and a couple of other men were like, we're not going anywhere. If they attack us, let them go ahead and do that. We'll put it on film for the whole nation to see what these violent agitators are like. They're not going to intimidate us to give up our First Amendment rights. That's what they want to do, and they're not going to succeed. Better live dangerously than to live peacefully in slavery.
It sounds to me, Ryan, sounds to me.
We actually ended up.
Go ahead.
What's that?
It sounds to me like you could pass a
I'm sorry?
testosterone test.
Well, the bottom line is, Thomas Jefferson said it so well. He said, rebellion against tyranny is obedience to God.
Yes.
And this is tyranny. These people, what they're trying to do, if they had their way, this is tyranny. Every single Democrat politician in America is a symbol of tyranny. And until they're all gone, our nation is under a severe threat. And when you start to see things from the perspective of how God sees them, start to respond in a different way. We're not dealing with people who can be reasoned with. This is an ideological war, and if we lose this war, we're going to be in a position as bad or worse than the horrific communism that wiped out 100 million in China, Russia, and Cambodia. That we are dealing with communists. We need to be very clear about that. We can't be like thinking that we're dealing with just innocent people who are they can be reasoned with, but we just need to be patient and gentle. Well, you know what? Neville Chamberlain thought that Hitler could be reasoned with and there was peace in our time. How did that end up?
Great point. And you know what? Despite all their calls for tolerance, it is widely known that the real hate and violence is coming from the left. I mean, recently in Portland, Oregon, Antifa members attacked patriots who were leaving a rally. A video shows people attempting to board a bus while being attacked by virulent leftists. They use batons, pepper spray, hammers to attack people on the bus. Antifa and leftists will attack anyone who documents their violence. They also lashed out and brutally assaulted journalist Andy Ngo in Portland. The LGBT activists and Antifa supporters who tried to shut conservatives down in Modesto are just like the other ones. They're a bunch of angry, weak, godless people who hate America. They hate conservatives and anyone who supports traditional values. They hate President Trump because he is straight, white, Christian man of power. And we could talk about the Democratic Party, and I'm reading from Jesse Lee Peterson. They're just literally consumed by evil and on a rampage to shut it down. I'm hoping, Ryan, that what we're seeing is the last gasp effort on the part of evil. I'm hoping that that's what this is. I'm hoping that it isn't something that's going to grow, that this is just their last hurrah, their last shout. And I've never talked to you about this, but how do you feel about this? Which end do you think this is coming from?
That's a good question, JR. And it's interesting because after Trump won the 2016 election, I remember writing a letter to the editor, and I stated that this election was the Gettysburg for the Democrats. Again, this is part two.
Okay.
And that this was like their last hurrah. They had just come so close, and now they were done. Well, I'm starting to rethink that because you would think that after having been exposed to so many good policies that have worked so much good in America, they would begin to change their minds. And yet what we find is like Pharaoh, they have hardened their hearts and continued to harden their hearts. And it seems that until they experience massive plagues, they are not going to let go of their effort to enslave America, because that's what it is. Let's be honest, that is what they care about. Nothing but power and money and popularity. They do not worship God, they worship themselves, and every single time that you and I and others in it who are conservatives refuse to worship them, we are committing blasphemy in their eyes. And this is why they hate us so much. We are not idolaters like them. And in a nation which is full of idolatry from both left and right, what we have done is we have minimized the intellect, which is our link to God, and we have elevated the flesh, which is our link to Satan. And so more and more and more what we've done is you got pop stars like Mark Anthony and Taylor Swift and all kinds of these celebrities who we're supposed to stick here and let these people lecture us. You know, and it was very telling. I remember Laura Ingraham on Fox. I don't watch television, but I thought she had a great point when she told LeBron, who popped off about Trump and said F Trump in one of his more intelligible conversations. When he said that, Laura Ingraham responded and said, LeBron, you know, why don't you just shut up and dribble? Which is very good advice for most athletes who have no clue about American history or politics.
Shut up and dribble.
I doubt severely if LeBron could even name the 3 branches of government in America. But anyhow, LeBron's response to that is, what was his response? Did he have anything? No. What he said was, Laura Ingraham? Who's that? Now, that is not just LeBron's response to Laura Ingraham, who is widely known by millions. That is LeBron and the celebrities' response to every single American who sees through their charade. Shut up, Ryan. Shut up, JT. Shut up, everyone. Your opinion doesn't matter. Who are you? Bow down and worship the idol that I have given you before. So we're going to have the courage like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to say we are not going to bow down. It does not matter if it costs us our lives. We still aren't bowing down to you, but we do trust that God will deliver us from you.
Amen.
Ryan, you do more than go on the street and out in public. And I've seen you're an incredible, prolific writer. And if you've got to remind me, I want to introduce you to Dennis. You two might hit it off. He's in California as well. I just ran into him this week. But you have a site that you put news on, do you not?
Yes, I do, and thanks for bringing that up. It's called Messano News.
Spell that.
M-E-S-S.
Go ahead, please.
It's M as in Mike, E as in Echo, S as in Sierra, S as in Sierra, A as in Alpha, N as in November, O as in Oscar, news.com. And what this site is every day between 50 to 100 articles are written, at least by noon, often earlier. And those links that's basically a great overview of all the issues of the day, a lot of concise historical insight from the Bible, the Constitution, and history by some of the most distinguished scholars in America, including Walter Williams, black conservative economist Thomas Sowell, black conservative commentator Victor Davis Hanson, one of the greatest living historians in America.
He is incredible. You've met him, haven't you?
Bill Federer.
You've met. Go ahead.
No, I have not met Vic. Actually, in October, there's going to be a meeting in Irvine. I will be meeting Victor Davis Hanson for the first time.
Okay.
Really look forward to that. And also, there is another one, David Barton. Bill Federer he's on American Minute on WND. Fabulous column a couple of times a week with such historical insight. He's basically an encyclopedia of history, just a brilliant, brilliant man. And so those articles are posted, a lot insight from all across the team on Islam, on guns, on climate change, that it's a hoax, on basically every single point on the Democrat Party platform is a lie. So once you realize that,
really,
then you could start to properly address it. There is not
really.
Bring up
Oh,
single point
please.
on their platform. It's all a
Please.
lie.
Yeah. So says you. Yeah. Hey, look, we're going to take a break. After the break, I know Jerry's probably Jerry is on hold. He's chomping at the bit to talk with you, and I'll bring Jerry on. And then I think if Larry wants to talk, I'll unmute him as well. But it'll be Jerry up first after the break. This is B.J. Edwards with Mr. Anderson, with Ryan Messano on the line with us. Brave young man. Need to get to know him.
Don't believe we're on the eve of destruction.
Last Call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
This is B.J. Edwards, and we're back. We're talking with Ryan Messano. Ryan was at the Straight Pride Parade in California, probably America's first, and we've been talking with him about what he's doing and what he ran into. We also have on the line with us Jerry from Texas. And Jerry, did you want to chaw a little bit with Ryan about what he's doing?
No, man. First I want to commend Ryan. I've talked with Ryan many times, and Ryan, buddy, you know how I feel about what you're doing there, and I'm so behind y'all on this, and I wish there was a way I could come out to these things and personally be there with you. What I'm concerned about is, you know, when things like this are formed and you have a parade or you have a gathering and you have these groups like Antifa or even the homosexual groups that come out, the sodomite groups come and want to, you know, get a little violent with you know, against what you're doing. I don't know why I keep going back in my mind that we have to somehow develop our own security team for these gatherings. Now, I know that most of the rural police officers and the sheriff's officers, for the most part, they probably support what we're all doing. But you got to understand that they are dictated by a higher power that probably isn't behind what we're doing. And in order for us to maintain some semblance of civility, we are going to have to develop our own security team that is on site when we meet with these, you know, when we gather or when we march or whatever else. Because these Antifa people, I hate to disagree with you, BJ, but these Antifa people, they're getting stronger and they're getting more violent. They're getting more vocal in these protests that they're doing. And if we don't take a stand, as I said before, if we don't get just as vocal, just as demanding as they are, and fight back, you know, not necessarily be on the offensive, be a defensive team when they come at us, or when they come after the people that are in the pride or in the gathering. Somehow we've got to be there to stop these people from you know, rushing forward. We got to stop them in their tracks. That's the only way these people are. They're the definition of a bully. The only reason why they keep going is nobody has stood up to them before. Nobody has taken a stand to stop them. And just like any other bully, once they're stood up to, they will tuck tail and run. They'll scatter like quail when you hit a bush. And that's what we need to do. We need to get just as vocal and just as demanding and if need be, I hate to say it, if need be, just as violent as they do.
Right.
You know, I understand. You know, I understand we're Christian, and we have an ethic that we got to follow, a Christian ethic. But like I've said so many times before, even God knew that there's going to come a time when you can't fight evil and tyranny with tolerance and understanding. And this is what I keep trying to tell all these Christians when they say, "Oh, well, you know, we've just got to maintain our air of tolerance. We've got to be understanding to their needs." You know what their needs are, folks? Their needs are to destroy us. That's what their need is. And I'll be danged if I stand by and let some idiotic loon on the left come after me because of my beliefs. It's not going to happen. And this is why we need to stand up to these idiots. We need to stand firm and don't let them push us. You know, if they want to get demanding, then we get demanding right back. They want to get vocal, we get just as vocal as they are, right back at them. If they want to get violent, well, I'm sorry, but there's people on our side that are probably far better trained and more far better prepared to handle that kind of violence than they are.
Ryan?
And I'm telling you, once you stand up to these loony bins, they will tuck tail and run. I saw that on YouTube many times when somebody finally had enough. They stood up to these idiots, and I left. I rolled on the floor laughing so hard at the way these it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, man. But, all right, I'm done.
Yeah,
Ryan, I got to let you know that Jerry's ex-military, so there might be a little that flavor in there. And I'm not necessarily disagreeing with what he's saying, but in this day and age, what I would fear is that once it's kind of like on a football field. The guy that gets the flag thrown on him is the one who was just the one that was responding, wasn't one that initiated the action. And I'm afraid that would happen. We have to be very careful. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, Jerry, but I'm saying if we're going to do this, we better make darn sure we do it properly. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, and to go along with that, I completely agree with Jerry's assessment that they're a bunch of bullies. They know very little about history. They're full of emotion. When you stand up to them, they tuck tail and run really quickly. When I was at Berkeley, it was amazing what happened because we started off, there was about, 200 of us, and then 200 black-clad Antifa types showed up, throwing M80s, clocking people in the head with bike locks. Some of them probably saw that YouTube video. But, from there, what happened was what developed exactly what Jerry talked about. People had enough of it. And people on our side showed up, and they were ready. They had, shields on. They had masks, just stuff to protect them from tear gas. They were armed, not armed like with guns or anything, but they had equipment. And so what happened was our side basically took Antifa and threw them at least 5 city blocks right into the heart of Berkeley. It was amazing what was happening because once you stood up to these people, they started turning tail, and of course you get the cat calls and fascist Nazis, all this stuff. But meanwhile, they were running as fast as their legs could carry them because as soon as they saw determined opposition, that's when they could not stand. And this is not only in this conflict, but also in nations. It's like the best way to preserve the peace is to prepare for war. That was Vegetius, which was a Roman historian, said that, and I completely agree with that because when you look and see what happened with Hitler, and let's not deceive ourselves, the Nazis were socialists. Bernie Sanders and today's Democrats, they're a bunch of socialists, communists, socialists. It's all the same thing. And fascism, communism, socialism, it's all the same. So when Hitler started to take power, what you saw was him and his thugs, which were the brown shirts of then are no different from Antifa of today. They would intimidate people who disagreed with them. They shouted down people. If you spoke out against them, they would beat you up. They would dominate the media. If you were from the media and you didn't like what they had to say, they would shut you down. They would attack your offices. They would destroy your presses. This is how these people operate. And what should have been done was the German law enforcement or Germans themselves should have stood up against these thugs. They did not do it, and we see how that ended up. Does anyone doubt that Antifa, if they get in control, these people, and they start running our society, that they're any less capable of the atrocities of communism or what Hitler did?
Oh, no, Ryan. No. I read a self-descriptive, a liberal who has his doctorate from a Russian university, told us exactly how good liberals are, and how none of this stuff that you're talking about would ever possibly happen. I'm sorry, but this is a guy that went to a Russian college, so he has to be right?
Well, there's a bunch of other Russians like Yuri Bezmenov, who was the highest-ranking KGB officer and defected to America. And in the 80s, he told us all about the Democrat Party of today. They are just like the KGB of his day. Our media is processed.
Yes.
The Democrat machines, how they work, they are the NKVD. The only thing that they're prevented by is our Constitution. Otherwise, we'd be getting knocks on our door. I mean, we all heard about it this last week, did we not? That our social media is now going to be giving us social media scores just like China does. That was just, we should have known this is happening. I know this is, I mean, I'm already experiencing this. I can't get a job as a police officer because I'm a conservative. I mean, that's very problematic. I mean, I'm a military veteran. I've got no criminal record. I'm perfectly fit. I could pass their aptitude, and I can't get a job as a police officer. There's something severely wrong in a society where you're 20 officers down. You need more officers. Your police force is full of corruption, and you won't hire somebody who could definitely be an asset. So we're facing quite a hurdle here, and I agree with Jerry. We need to be wise. Now that said, wise as serpents, harmless as doves. The more Charles Sumner gave a speech before the Civil War, and he called out the evil of slavery, and he did it in a very provocative way. He basically told the South, and we could do this today too. We could imitate him exactly. He said that the South was their slavery was an ugly prostitute, and they were the only ones that loved her, and everybody else saw she was ugly and couldn't stand her, but the South loved her. Well, the South was severely offended by that, and that prompted them to come to his desk and beat him half to death when he was sitting at his desk. And that was what infuriated the North to touch off the Civil War, which destroyed the South. So, and we do need to attack their idols constantly. Do not hold back. The problem is we sit, and we don't need to use profanity, and we can leave out threats of violence right now, but take their sacred idols. We know what they are: Islam, homosexuality, abortion, equality, all the Marxist agenda. Take their sacred idols in the public square and absolutely destroy them in public. Humiliate them. That's what they need. They need that. But Solomon advised nothing less. He says, open rebuke is better than secret love. He also said, a rod for the back of a fool. And let's be honest, I'm not calling anybody a fool, but I am saying that every last idea on that Democrat platform is an idea promoted by only a fool. So if they're going to sit there and stand behind foolish ideas, they need to stand aside to face, it's not just our wrath. It is the wrath of God.
Mm-hmm.
God himself hates the wicked every single day. And they have no intention of changing. They don't want to change. They don't respect anything but power. So, last I checked, greater is he that is with you than he that is with them.
Kind of Machiavellian, but I understand what you're saying, Ryan, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I posed the question in the first part of our show, earlier in our show, is the problem that we have is we have an identity crisis. You mentioned we in your conversation. We don't even know who we are. And we also don't like who we are. We pick on one another. Sometimes we're this way, sometimes we're that. Ryan, how would you define who we is, who we are? How would you do that?
Well, and we're going to have to go historically, and the problem is that, unfortunately, our media, schools, and tech companies have been doing this for decades, distorting the comprehension of the average American of their heritage. Regardless of what the fake media and fake schools have said, our nation was started as a Christian nation. So we are those who have inherited the legacy of founders like John Adams, who said that the Constitution was created for a moral and a religious people. It is incapable of governing any other. We are those who recognize that those 204 founders took 5,000 years of human history and the Bible and distilled it into a constitution. And that is the most glorious political document in world history that has turned America into the greatest nation on earth, which is now under attack by types who not only don't understand it, but think that they have something better, when in reality what they have is so inferior, and we already have evidence it does not work. So we are the people who are able to stand up for history, for the Bible, for the Constitution. That's what unites us. Those are the common threads that we're all going to have come from differing ideologies and differing belief systems, but we believe in what you stand for, the natural family. We believe in virtue and in wisdom and in all that makes man great. We are not perfect, but despite our imperfections, we understand that a just man falls 7 times and rises up again. So we are those who follow after righteousness. They are those who follow after Satan and follow after wickedness. It's quite clear. This is a battle between good and evil. It's been being fought since the beginning of the world.
Ryan, I agree with you in terms of that's who we should be. But my question is, who are we? And we're going to take a break, so I'll give you a minute to think about that. Who are we? If the Martians really did start this nation, I'm playing devil's advocate here. If the Martians really did start this nation and took that monkey and changed it, and then they gave us religion, and let's say they gave us Christianity, and that's what they planned it to be. If they were to come back and take a look at who we are, the loyal opposition, what would they be describing? I don't think it's what you just described, but we can talk about that when we come back from the break, and I'll open up the lines for Jerry and Larry, anybody else that wants to chime in on that. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call.
Out where the river broke, the bloodwood and the desert oak, holding wrecks and bodies.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with B.J. Edwards.
B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, doing his usual good job of picking correct songs. Incredible. We're on the phone with Ryan Messano, who was at the Straight Pride Parade, probably America's first, and of all places, California, and was talking about his personal experiences. I've kind of waylaid him into a conversation about who we really are, and I'm talking about the opposition. We know, and that's one of the problems we have. We know who blacks are. We know who women are. We know who gays are. But who are us? Who are we that is opposing this? And again, Ryan, I think eloquently, you said it very eloquently in terms of who we should be. But when I look at the opposition, I see schizophrenia. I see us being masochistic. We're against one another. We're always criticizing ourselves. How can we expect to win if we, number one, don't know who we are, and number two, disagree with who we are? How can you do that? I mean, we have the same problems that homosexuals have. They take a look in a mirror and they don't like what they see, so they generate hate for themselves, but they want to share that with everybody else and bring them down to their level. So I'll start with you, Ryan. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, and George Washington says, discipline is the soul of an army. And so without discipline, everything that we're going to really try to do is not going to attain much. So we do need to be disciplined, and disciplined in accord with absolute truth, the absolute truths that are found in the Bible, the absolute truths of the Constitution. We're going to have to be humble and admit that despite all that the media and schools have fed us, our intellect and our wisdom does not come close to the founders of our nation.
Amen.
I'm sorry. I can admit that. I would just hope that most of the rest of us can. I look back with regret at all the time I wasted watching television, movies, all this entertainment. You see, the founders weren't exposed to that stuff. They never viewed pornography, not once. So their minds were untainted by a lot of the corruptions that a lot of us were fed, and with the intent to destroy our minds, which is the greatest asset of America, and thereby to destroy America. So now that we're wise to this, we could turn back to God's Word, because the Jews, whenever they departed and they got in trouble, they had to turn back to God's Word, which was that's where the precepts were. But we have to be aware that there is a campaign against us, and that discipline, I mean, it may be painful, and there is definitely going to be criticism. I mean, when the founders got together to bring together the Constitution, there was, I think it went 7 weeks or so, there was strong dissent and strong criticism. But what they recognized was that you cannot take that minority voice, that voice of a Socrates who got put to death for telling the truth, that voice of Jesus who was put to death at 33 for telling the truth. You can't take that voice and silence it. You need to ensure that the rights of your most vulnerable sector of society, those who are telling the truth, the virtuous truth, not the crazy people talking about free speeches for pornography. I'm not talking about them. You have to protect that moral minority. You have to. If you do not protect the rights of that person, your society is lost. The reason why America is so great is because we place so much emphasis on defending the rights of the individual. Now, you see the Democrats, they always talk about the collective. Now, when they're talking about the collective, let's not be deceived. They're talking about the collective is basically what their elites want. That's all that the collective is. They don't care about the individual at all. They're constant liars. Bernie Sanders is a loser who never had a job until 40, a crackpot who at age 21 was writing about how women fantasize about being raped by 3 men. These Democrats are as corrupt as can be. They do not care about the individual, but they will sit there and lie to you all day long that they care about the individual. What made America great was we care about that individual. And so fierce criticism from an individual towards ideas is not a bad thing at all. If we have the truth, our idea ought to be able to withstand the most fierce criticism. Jesus, he had the truth, and he got as fierce criticism as you could possibly get. And yet when we look back at what happened, do we see that he had the answer to everything that everybody threw at him? So if we have the truth, we need to be confident that we have that. And we should be able, I mean, every single argument that the left has, that non-Christians have, we ought to be able to defend our beliefs and have an answer for every man that has to reason of the hope that's within us.
Well stated. Well stated. And I have to put a plug in for the natural family, because that's really how we got to where we are here in America today. We've blown it. We've absolutely blown it.
If you didn't do it, I was going to throw that in there.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, isn't it where the family? Isn't that where a lot of these things that Ryan was sharing start? Where we find authority and how to find discipline and direction. It starts in the family, a good family, a family that's on a vertical relationship.
And by vertical, you mean man, woman, children. And if you're a Christian, that's God, Jesus Christ, man, woman, children. That's not the Pope.
Correct.
That's not your pastor. That's you. And that's where we have really lost it. The men in this nation have not, and I got my hand in the air, we've not done our job. And as a result, we're seeing what we're seeing. This meeting that we talked about in West Gomorrah, Ohio, that's a Jezebel. A Jezebel introduced it, and Jezebel's in control. Mostly women in the meeting, or men that think they're women, and men that are being manipulated by women. And it's just a shame that this has gotten as far as it is, but we're telling you, if we're going to get it back, we're going to have to restore the family. And it has to be in a natural way. That's what the laws of nature say. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to be a Christian to understand that if you walk off a cliff, you're going to go down. That's a natural result. And if you use a body part as a sex organ, which wasn't designed for a sex organ, there's going to be natural consequences to that. And you're not going to live, well, your life's going to be changed. Once you go against nature, there's always consequences. There's always consequences. On the other hand, if you go with nature, there are as well consequences or results. And they're good consequences. This world and we were designed not for pain, but for pleasure of the Lord, but for doing good things, for experiencing good things, not bad things. But we're running into all of that because we've gotten so far. We're not calibrated with nature anymore. It's not there. We're not there. And we have to realize that and recognize that. And the instrument, the material instrument that we can see on planet Earth that does that is the family. I say that if you really want to know the effects of the family, go to a prison and talk to the prisoners about their family life. If you haven't thought about that before, if you've never done that before, you will be shocked. But they're going to tell you exactly what I'm telling you. And it took me years and years and years to get to the point where I am today. So if you don't get this today when you listen to this program, that's okay. But you're eventually going to have to admit to it. You're going to have to see it. I was fortunate enough that God let me see it. And I was stubborn, that's why I didn't see it sooner, but God let me see it. It is the vehicle that's going to get us through this mess that we're in this nation today. And I have hope and pray that we'll be able to do that. And I'm running across more people every day. I just can't get a hold of enough of them fast enough. I don't know how we can make that happen. But we're gonna keep trying anyway, and it's in God's hands. We've got a couple more minutes, Ryan. I want you to mention your site again for the new site, if you would.
Sure. It's MessanoNews.com. At the very, you click on whatever month, so there's August 2019, and then I'll bring up that day. There's a pinned post at the top that has a Patreon and a PayPal link. So the goal is to get 5,000 people paying $1 to $5 monthly. This way you have real news as opposed to the average American is paying $60 to $120 a month for cable to lie to them and feed them all kinds of garbage. So my site will not only protect you from garbage, but it will actually give you the actual truth. So you could pay far less and get far more, which in a capitalist society, I'd be making lots of money. But unfortunately, because the communism has been spread in the schools and media so much, you got millions of Americans who just can't recognize a good deal when they see it. But when you were talking about the family, I wanted to. I was just reading the other night. Laura Ingalls Wilder wrote "Farmer's Boy," and there was passages that were jumping out to me now that I never really saw in the past.
Yeah.
But one of them says, "Thank you," Almanzo said. These were the only words he was allowed to speak at table. Imagine that. Kids were not allowed to speak. Children must be seen and not heard. And that was a very respectable household. Then he talked about how when he was the colts or the calves, he was not allowed to touch them because he says a boy who didn't know any better might scare a young horse or tease it or even strike it, and that would ruin it. It would learn to bite and kick and hate people, and then it would never be a good horse. And I thought, wow, how perfectly does that encapsulate what today's Democrat is? A lot of them were mistreated as kids, and now they've grown up into some very hateful people. So you hope they change, but you have to be honest, not all of them will. But it starts when they were younger, and so, and I just wanted to end too, to get close to home. My sister, I came across an instance where she was a little baby, and her husband engaged in some despicable behavior, and so she now had to leave because her baby is being abused at 1 year old. So this strikes home. This is a battle against evil, and it is all around us, and it's got to be taken seriously. But thank you very much for taking the time to have me on. Really appreciate it, DJ, and I definitely look forward to the future, whatever that holds.
We appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you for being in the battle. Thank you very much, and God bless and Godspeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
Wonderful input. Wonderful input.
Thank you.
No, that is just an incredible witness, and that's the reason we have Ryan on, is because of the witness.
And he's got good answers. He's got good answers.
Well, he's well researched. He's very intelligent. He's experienced a lot. But the one thing that I like that he said, and this is what happens to you when you recognize the importance of the family. Then you start listening for things, important things.
You do pick up on things.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yep.
And it's amazing. And if you're listening to everyday conversation, media, I don't care what media you're listening to, family will come out.
Yep.
It will jump right at you, and it will sit there, and you'll start thinking about it. I wanted to real quick maybe suggest, if Jerry's still on, he's got a website I think he might want to share.
Jerry, you still with us?
Oh, yeah.
You have a website you want to share? Or a Facebook page?
Well, we have actually most of everybody that listens here probably recognizes my voice. Of course, our website is ChristianMilitia.org, but I've changed the name of the Facebook page because I've got a lot of flack from people on Facebook saying that the name of this group is too combative. So I've kind of toned it down a little bit and changed the name of it to follow more or go along in line with what we are all trying to do. And I've changed the name to the Christian Family Advocates, where if you notice the word advocate, it still makes us a fighter group, but we've toned the name down a little bit. So it's Christian Family Advocates on Facebook. But if they want to visit the website, it's Christian Militia. Both groups are the same. Nothing's changed other than the Facebook name. I just want to also say that for all those listening, they need to understand whether you consider yourself a Christian or not. If you believe in the family, if you believe in raising your children in the same manner that you were raised in, where you teach your kids manners, you teach them how to say yes and no sir, and yes ma'am and no ma'am. Thank you and no thank you are very important words. But if you believe in raising your children right, if you believe in the family sticking together, if you are totally against divorce, when you make a vow with your wife, you understand that vow is for life.
Jerry, we're going to have to run, brother. The show is over with. Thank you very much for your input. Thanks to everybody for listening today. We'll talk with you next Saturday. Get involved. It is your job, folks. Get involved, and you got to get involved now. B. Jetters, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. And I'm going to do this.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Last Call with BJ Edwards.